From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Friday, April the 5th, 2024. The IDF said one of its vehicles came under fire on Israel's border with Jordan overnight last night. The IDF wrote a preliminary investigation of the incident reveals that a suspect crossed the Jordan River crossing and opened fire at a military vehicle that was conducting a routine patrol in the area. There were no injuries. The Times of Israel reported that the suspect did not infiltrate Israel's border fence and fled back into Jordan. 2 senior IDF officers were removed from duty after the conclusion of an investigation into the accidental killing earlier this week of 7 World Central Kitchen aid workers in Gaza. The IDF said measures taken following the tragic incident include the dismissal of the Brigade Fire Support Commander and the dismissal of the Brigade Chief of Staff from their positions, as well as the reprimand of additional commanders. The IDF said those who approved the strike were convinced that they were targeting armed Hamas operatives and not World Central Kitchen employees. The strike on the aid vehicles is a grave mistake stemming from a serious failure due to a mistaken identification, errors in decision-making, and an attack contrary to the standard operating procedures of the IDF. Well, the unintentional deaths of the aid workers in Gaza this week was one of the items discussed yesterday in a phone call between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. President Joe Biden, whom the White House said made clear to the Prime Minister the need for Israel to announce and implement a series of specific, concrete, and measurable steps to address civilian harm, humanitarian suffering, and the safety of aid workers, and said that U.S. policy with respect to Gaza will be determined by our assessment of Israel's immediate action on these steps. Biden also underscored that an immediate ceasefire is essential and urged the Prime Minister to empower his negotiators to conclude a deal without delay to bring the hostages home. The White House said the two also discussed the threats from Iran against Israel, Biden making clear that the U.S. strongly supports Israel in the face of those threats. And following the call between the two leaders, the Times of Israel reports that Netanyahu's office announced several measures to increase the aid flow to Gaza, which were welcomed by the White House. They include a commitment to open the Ashdod port for the direct delivery of assistance into Gaza, to significantly increase deliveries from Jordan directly into Gaza, and for the reopening of the Erez crossing for a new route for assistance to reach northern Gaza. The Erez crossing, by the way, has been closed since October the 7th, when Hamas terrorists blasted through the barriers of the crossing, slaughtering and abducting soldiers and civilian guards who were stationed there, and then continued their massacre and abductions into southern Israel. Netanyahu yesterday met with a Republican U.S. Congressional delegation organized by pro-Israel lobby AIPAC at his office in Jerusalem, briefing the group, his office said, on the continued battle against Hamas in Gaza, as well as ongoing efforts to free the hostages and the issue of humanitarian aid. The Prime Minister thanked the group for their support and said of the fighting, "This is a larger battle. Our battle is your battle. Our victory is your victory. And if we don't have a victory, this will have enormous implications for American security, for our common future. So we must win." Well, the families of American Israeli hostages still held in Gaza met with elected officials for a bipartisan press conference today in New York City, ahead of the devastating anniversary coming up this Sunday of 6 months of captivity of the 134 hostages, including their loved ones, still being held in Gaza. The families, hosted by the American Jewish Committee, joined with New York Congressman Dan Goldman and Mike Lawler, expressing their plea for the immediate and unconditional release of all the hostages. Orna Nutra, mother of American-Israeli hostage Omer, noted that he was born in New York City just over a month after the 9/11 terror attacks.
Here today, in New York City, 22 years later, I ask, have we learned nothing? Where is the public outcry? For all those asking for an immediate ceasefire without the release of the hostages, where is your moral compass? The call should be to Hamas to release the hostages, to put down their arms, and to allow the whole region to breathe once again.
And a massive rally is planned in New York City for this Sunday to mark the shocking and tragic 6 months of captivity, taking place at Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza at 12 noon. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Friday, April the 5th. Live Shabbat services are coming up at 6 o'clock from New York City's Central Synagogue, followed by Shabbat services from the Hampton Synagogue. At 8:30, Justin Pine speaks with David Zvi Kalman on how the future of technology might shape Jewish life. At 9:30, Abigail Pogrebin sits down with Rabbi Shai Held to talk about his book, Judaism is About Love. At 10:30, it's a replay from the Hampton Synagogue, followed by a replay from Central. And coming up next, a look at this week's Torah Portion. And that's the JBS News Update for Friday, April the 5th, 2024. I'm Teisha Bader. Shabbat Shalom. Am Yisrael Chai.